Where? At you?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't even publicly spoken about any of these things too, so it's perfect. This next chapter for me feels exciting, horrifying, uncomfortable, and romantic. Hi, I'm Sahara Rose, best-selling author, podcast host, and founder of Dharma Coaching Institute. To me, being a multidimensional woman is all about stepping into your full range of emotions. You know, so often we try to just be in our joy or just be in our pleasure, or even society makes us just be in our anxiety or fear, but to be able to step into our full range of power, the parts of us that are fearless and expressed and capable, as well as the parts of us that are soft and sensual and desiring to fully surrender to the flow of life. The parts of us that are mystical and wise and ancient and tuned in, and the parts of us that are childlike and playful and joyful. To me, when we're able to bring all of these sides of ourselves online and invite them to the table, that is when we become fully expressed. To me, stepping into your queendom as a woman is having a funeral for all of the parts of yourself that were still in the maiden. The parts of you that are waiting to be chosen by someone or something to be good enough. The parts of you that are still acting out of this fear of abandonment or this deep wound that I am not enough inherently. And so often we believe we're in our queendom, and we are, and there's parts of us, you know, there's always parts of us that are in our queen and then parts of us that are in more of the wounded princess. But as we go through these massive initiations in life, such as breakups, such as health challenges, such as, you know, these huge obstacles that spirit blesses us with, we can take these as opportunities to really look at all of the old programming that we were operating under and seeing all the parts of ourselves that we were giving up our power to someone else, whether it was a partner, whether it was a job or authority figure, and to reclaim all of that and to set our standards high so we are in our sacred thrones and we decide. So to me, it's that even that embodiment of being in my queen, like instantly I want to stand up taller and energetically have my crown on, and I am the one who's making the decisions rather than trying to get other people to like me and morph myself into that character that will like be approved and get that tap on my head. But that requires going through the initiations, which are painful and tough, and oftentimes it's lonely. You know, you're never going to get all of the validation that we want from the outside world on our path to the queen. It's actually letting go of that need for approval that we truly gain the approval of ourselves. For me personally, I was in my queendom to a degree, but the initiation of divorce has been my ultimate journey way into that fuller expression. You know, letting go of a partner that I was with for over 7 years and all of the parts of me that felt only whole when I was in relationship with someone else. And I've chosen to marry myself and ultimately marry the goddess, you know, and when you're married to the goddess, it can sometimes be a lonely and dark path because the goddess isn't going to allow you to settle with those former ways that you undermined yourself, or you allowed yourself to not be fully met, or you carried these limiting beliefs of, well, if I'm in my full power, it's going to be too much. I'm going to be abandoned. I'm not going to be chosen. I'm not going to be in divine partnership. But ultimately, when we abandon ourselves for these things, we never actually get what we want. So for me, going through this complete clearing of all of the illusions, which are not just from my lifetime, but they were from my ancestral lineage of, you know, in my family, all of my grandmothers were in forced child marriages. So it was literally the little girl being given to a man as a piece of property. And your worth was inherent to how many sons that you bore for this person. And the womb was a commodity. And for women, our pleasure was not even spoken about at all. In fact, the man's pleasure was inherently related to the woman's pain. So for me, my journey now in this singledom, queendom that I am in is reclaiming pleasure as a tool for healing. Letting orgasmic energy be healing. You know, healing doesn't just have to be shadow work. It's definitely part of it, but it's also taking that pleasure and that sensuality that we have been so discarded from, you know, because we're used to, oh, well, if I'm in partnership, I get that from my man, I get that from my partner. And there's still a lot of guilt and shame about having our own pleasure practice, right? Of like, does that mean he's not gonna think he's enough? Or fear of our own bodies, you know, fear of really intimately knowing ourselves, even self-disgust that shows up for so many of us women. So for me, being able to use my pleasure, my sensuality, my dance as a means for healing, and then to tie the two related. So from orgasmic energy might come tears of grief, and letting them simultaneously exist and not making it wrong, not making your sexuality be for performance or be for someone else. But this energy is ultimately what has created you, all of life. You know, so what if we let that energy move through our bodies and heal all of the distortions within ourselves, all of the parts that we have died, all of the parts that we have abandoned, and letting that energy heal and transmute and rebirth the new codes that are coming through. To me, that is the ultimate practice, and it's one that you can only do on your own, because you only let yourself go there, whether it's the tears or the sounds or the grunts or whatever those traumas are that we're holding on to. When we're in our own sensual practice, we can let the ugly parts of us come online too, and merging them with the beautiful, and that's how we become whole. For me, in my new chapter of Queendom, I have completely stepped into the unknown. I don't even know where I'm going next month. I don't have a place to live right now. I am in relationship with the divine. So I just ask Spirit to lead me. For example, I'm here right now recording this in Bali, and I was supposed to leave in 2 weeks, but then I might have had to leave in 2 days, and I wasn't sure which one to go. And I said, God, just let me know. If I am meant to stay in Bali, make changing the flights really expensive. If I'm meant to go back to LA, make it really seamless and easy. I'll follow your lead. And it ended up being seamless and easy. So I'm like, okay, I guess that's the next part of my journey. And when you're in conversation with Spirit, you're ultimately never gonna make a wrong decision, because it's not in your head. And there is no wrong decision in life. It's just, do I take this pathway or that pathway? And as someone who, you know, I have 8 planets in Capricorn and running a business with a team, and my life has had to look up to this point with a lot of structure, being in a marriage, etc., that now divorcing myself from even that part of me, of like, what does it look like to be in complete listening and adjusting? And that doesn't mean, surrender doesn't mean I just do nothing and I'm complacent. Surrender means I ask for guidance from the divine, and then with that intuitive awareness, which sometimes comes in whisper, sometimes comes in micro nudges, sometimes just comes in a conversation you have with someone, from there I take clear, aligned action. So this year for me looks like a lot more traveling. My things, I only have my clothes. I've let go of all of my personal belongings except my DJ equipment. So I have my things in storage, and I am traveling and letting myself be guided through conversation. For example, I really wanted to DJ at Envision Festival, but they were completely filled up. And then the other day I met this beautiful couple. I ended up sitting with them for 5 hours. Turns out they were getting married at Envision, and now I'm DJing at their wedding at Envision Festival in a few weeks. And I'm like, perfect, Spirit lead me. And I'm continuing to let the next place show itself and the next place show itself, rather than trying to have my like 2023 year-long plan. It's more like having a flashlight, and I can just see the next 5 feet ahead, and that's enough. This next chapter for me feels exciting, horrifying, uncomfortable, and romantic. You know, because that's what romance is. It's being in that unknown, and it's being surprised and delighted by the universe, and also letting go of this need to not experience the heartbreak. Because when you're in the unknown, there are micro heartbreaks every day. I am in deep relationship with my emotions right now. So sometimes I'm like, having a great time, and then like a wave of sadness will come, and instead of being like, what's going on? I'm just like, yes, sadness, integrate into my being. And then that allows more of the adventure to integrate into my being. And, you know I'll look back on this chapter of my life and be like, this is the most like wild, exciting, cool time, because to someone else it does. But when you're in that, like, I have no idea what's happening, I'm taking it day by day, your ego is trying to crutch to some sort of form of reality. And I'm witnessing that of like, oh, that part of me that's like, you know what, just get an apartment. Like, it'll be a lot more safe if you have a lease. Or like, just find a person, or find this, or find that. And the more that you can resist those temptations to hold back to those former realities that once gave you comfort, the more you step into a higher timeline than you could have ever imagined possible. So as I resist and say no to the stability, to the partner, to this, to the that, I open myself up to this whole, like, it's like now I'm on approaching penthouse level and getting more and more there, that I could have never seen this horizon had I just like gotten off on the 3rd floor, because I know that territory. You know, it's so interesting because I've written a book called Discover Your Dharma, and it's all about how your obstacles lead you to your Dharma, your soul's purpose. And when I was in my dark night of the soul up till that point of my journey, you know, it's funny, you think you have one, they keep coming. But when I was in my early 20s, I went through really bad health issues. My body went into perimenopause, and doctors told me I would never be able to have children. I would have osteoporosis, a whole host of health issues that happen when your body goes into perimenopause at 21 years old. On top of that, I had no idea what I was doing with my life. I was fighting with my parents, which eventually led to my dad disowning me. And it was this like really fearful period of my life. And at that point, I didn't know that the dark night of the soul is part of alchemy to lead you to your highest truth. I was just like, shit, like, what is going on? But even then, and I was actually in Bali at that time too, and even then I would tell myself, I would say, you know what? This is just the shitty part of your memoir. You know, this is the part one day that you gotta have the shitty part, and then it's like, it all gets better from here. And I didn't know what the better from here was, but I just knew this was the shitty part. And then when I found myself now going through this divorce and the heartbreak and the betrayals and all of the things that come with that, I'm like, wow, I'm in the shitty part of my next memoir, you know? And now having that awareness of it can only go up from here as long as I'm living my truth. And it feels like being awake in a dream, because you know your pain is your purpose and your mess is your message and the obstacles are guiding you to your path. But then to be back in it with this awareness, feeling your feelings while knowing optimally it's exactly as it needed to be for me to be able to get to where I'm going. And that to me is true awareness. I came across royal codes on Instagram a few years ago, and I loved how it was natural, yet also very sexy and embodied, because, you know, often when we're on a spiritual journey, we trade our like BCBG party outfits for like the hippie pants, which I totally did for many years as well. But then we lose touch with just our natural shape and form. And sometimes we feel like, oh, to be spiritual, I must discard myself from my body. Like the body is the lower self, the spirit is the higher self. And I think that's part of the journey. But then I loved seeing these slits and these colors and how it celebrated the female form. And I wanted that more in my life, but when I would see the fashion related to that, like first of all, I didn't want to support fast fashion. And then secondly, I wanted to do it in a way that was honoring my queen and not going back to that maiden, like pick me, choose me energy. So I loved it, and then ended up connecting with Hart through mutual friends. And it's funny because Hart and I had a phone conversation. It was the night before I was moving to Miami. So I was also in this big like unknown portal, and we spoke and connected. And, you know, I started wearing the codes like for my book launch and things like that. And it's just been this like beautiful like maturation of the relationship just between Hart and I. And then of course with the royal codes, and it's been beautiful witnessing more and more queens like wearing them, and then seeing more designs and more colors. And I also feel the more embodied I get, the more comfortable I even feel showing my body. And I feel like sometimes too, that's part of the feminine journey of, you know, your body doesn't need to be perfect or look a certain way or whatever the external thing is, but to celebrate the female form as it is and not wait till this point to be able to show it, but to be like, oh, this right here is enough. And also letting it be comfortable too. That's really important to me, because sometimes you wear like, you know, a sexy outfit and you're suffering because you're uncomfortable, but to wear something that like, I would just wear this lounging at home and then I could also wear it out, that's the perfect integration. When I wear royal codes, I feel this like up leveling in my energy, because you know when you're wearing like mismatched outfit, like you think it's easier, like you just put on your shitty pajamas that you always wear, you think it's easier, but then like energetically you're matching shitty pajamas, you know? It's like even just wearing like a bottom and top of the same color, I feel quite proud of myself of like, I'm matching, you know? And it's like that little extra effort, even though it's not even effort, it's just putting on like another comfortable outfit, but it makes me feel like I've put this much more energy into how I feel, which makes me then want to show up a little bit more outgoingly and have more of that confidence within myself. And I notice, I feel like, because the beauty path is such a part of the feminine, so when we feel beautiful, we show up like this radiant flower, which then magnetizes experiences in our lives. If I could give any message to the woman watching or reading this, it's that if you are going through it right now, you are not alone. I am hearing and seeing so many queens and priestesses and those of us who are devoted to the path of the goddess, having the rug be swept under our feet and having all of the illusions come forward for us to really look at the parts of ourselves that we're still in fantasy thinking, that we're still looking at a person's potential rather than reality, that we're still waiting for them to change, something to change, and that's our delusional thinking. And to really own that within ourselves, have compassion for that, and also know that the reason why this is coming to awareness is because we're being called to a higher path. And to not go onto that lifeboat of whatever that former reality is, the job, the ex, the whatever, but to use this as your initiation to go to those more truthful layers and truthful layers and truthful layers, which isn't just the path of ascension, it's the path of descension. You know, going into the body, going into the womb, going into the emotionality, going into that old haggard woman within you that feels so angry and abandoned at the masculine, and giving her a voice. Going into the parts of you that feel like I've done everything for everyone and this is how I'm treated. Give those parts of you a voice. Don't judge them. Don't think, oh, I'm spiritual now, like I'm good. Like, give those parts of you a voice. Go into rage ritual, go into grief ritual. Let all of those things be on your altar. And the more you have access to them, the more naturally the beauty and the joy and the pleasure will unfold. But don't do them for those things either. You know, it's so easy for us to be like, I'm letting go, so now I can become. It's like, be in the death portal as long as it takes. And let whatever is meant to come through come out on the other side in divine timing. Patience is so important on this path. You can connect with me on my podcast. It's called Highest Self Podcast. It's all about taking spirituality and making it modern, fun, and relatable, especially for today's woman. I also have some books, and you can find that all on my website, I am Sahara Rose, as well as on my Instagram, I am Sahara Rose. So thank you guys so much for tuning in.
You are A1, girl.
Can we go?
A1.
Can we go?
They call me the one take wonder for a reason.
Wow. When those hit me, I was like, oh.
Sure.
All right.
So beautiful.
Yeah, thank you guys so much.